So today's gospel, like many, is loaded with great insights and pieces of wisdom of our faith that we can glean from it. I'd like to look at just two things, but looking at yesterday, because I recognize most of you that yesterday you were probably at Mass, it's a continuation from yesterday where Jesus called his apostles by name, inviting them each by name to follow him, but then sending them out. So he calls them by name and then sends them out, commissions them to go and preach the gospel, sending them on mission. I hope you realize, though, that it wasn't just those 12 that were called by name and sent out, but by the very fact that we're baptized, the very fact that we're confirmed by name, that then does send us out on mission as well. We are participants in this, no longer just sort of bystanders in the crowd, but we are called and sent as well. Now, 2 points that I want to look at from today's gospel. The first was the take nothing, taking absolutely nothing. He lists all these things: no bag for your journey, no 2 tunics, no sandals, no staff, no silver, no copper. Don't take anything for the mission. I'm going to look at that. And the second point I want to look at is the laborer deserves their food. The laborer deserves their food. So those are the 2 points I want to look at in depth. Let's start first by take nothing. So Jesus is telling them, sending them out on mission. Imagine being sent out on mission and being told, take no gold, no silver, no copper in your belts. In other words, don't bring cash, don't bring a credit card, Interact and all the other options we have. No bag for your journey, no 2 tunics, no sandals, no staff at all. What does that tell us? Now, many of you know that in about 2 weeks or 3 weeks I'll be going to Halifax for a year, and so naturally I've got sort of a suitcase out and all sorts of things out, and I couldn't help when I was reading this yesterday to think, Lord, I am bringing a winter jacket, I am bringing a toque, there is no doubt about it, it gets cold there with boots and everything, a scarf. I can't go there without taking that. And so maybe that was just sort of a product of being in the Middle East or in the Holy Land. But the message behind that, we can't get caught up in the details. The message behind that is that God will care for us. God will provide for us. He will be there in our times of need, both for the mission that we are sent out to proclaim the gospel, to live the gospel in our lives, but He will also provide in our everyday lives, in every aspect of our lives. We need to trust Him. We need to have faith in Him, that God will be there for us and provide for us. So He's encouraging them, because naturally, for those listening then, and for us listening to it again today, it's shocking. We think, well, of course I'm going to bring a change of clothes, a bag, some sandals, stuff. I'm going to bring the essentials. These are the essentials. He's not listing things like, extra things that we need. He's listing the essentials. And He's saying, trust completely, trust in completely God's providence, His care for you in the mission, but in your whole life too, because these are practical things. So that's a lesson for us, that we need to trust that God will care for us both in life and in our mission. And that requires great faith, great trust. Great faith and great trust. And where does that come from, that faith and trust? It comes from our relationship with God that is firmly established and practiced and lived out every single day. And so the temptation sometimes when we hear something like this, or when life becomes difficult and we feel that maybe God is not caring for us, not providing for us, we can begin to worry. We can have fear. Maybe God isn't taking care of me. Maybe God is not providing for my basic needs or what I need to get to heaven. And if we run into fear, we run into worry in these elements of the mission or in life, we need to work on a relationship with God. We need to trust Him. We need to double down, so to speak, to say, Lord, I don't see how You're providing for me at this time, or I have this great need. Or sometimes it's a realization that what we're putting our faith and trust in is not a need. It's an extra. It's a want. And to see that difference between needs and wants, and that God will provide for our essential needs as well as what we need to get to heaven. That's what He's focused on. Not for us to necessarily live a very comfortable life, or to have all the gadgets and the toys that we want and everything to be perfect and smooth. That isn't life. That isn't the cross. That isn't reality. But God will provide for our essential needs and everything we need to get to heaven. And so we need to build our faith and trust. That's the message from today's gospel. The first part I wanted to focus on. The second element I wanted to look at was when He was telling them that the laborers deserve their food. The laborers deserve their food. Now in this passage, you may hear in other religious denominations, they'll go on a rant on tithing or giving to the church and things like that, and we need to give more, and we're building a church, or our roof is leaky, or something like that, and they'll take this passage and go on with that. I don't want to go in that tangent with it. I want you to know that he's talking to a group of people in this gospel. He's talking to a group of people, so he has named 12. There's lots more than 12 gathered and listening to the Lord. So he's saying, these laborers that I have chosen, they need to be taken care of. And it's up to all of you to take care of these laborers. So in the current situation of the church, it means that everyone, all the baptized, all the confirmed, are responsible for taking care of the church and the mission of the church. All of us. Yes, there's the financial aspect, but there's so much more than that. There's so much more than that. I want to look at some of the other things. Often in parishes, in today's situation, the way the parishes are run, there's a small core group of people that do everything, year in and year out. There's no new blood, whether it be with ministries and groups, or helping out around the parish, or outreach and things like that. It's the same group of people doing everything. We need to change that. When Jesus is saying the laborers deserve their food, it is encouraging all of us, it is motivating all of us to give of our time, to volunteer, to help out in the mission of the church, to help out the ones that the Lord has chosen in any way that is needed, any way that is needed. And so sometimes it's volunteering time, so that the core group that's been doing everything year in and year out don't get burnt out and don't despair. We need that new blood. I'm not just talking about young people, I'm talking about all people. Sometimes it's a contribution of your time. Another element is encouragement. Encouragement for those people that are doing things in the church, either running a ministry or the priest or the deacon, the staff, everyone. Encouragement and support is needed. That's what we need. Sometimes the food that we need, the laborer deserves their food. It could be a compliment, job well done. It's so easy to criticize. It's so easy to criticize. Anything. Where is everybody? Or I hear these things all the time. Where are our young people? And you get negative on that. Or even, where are the men? I've heard that in the parish, or in parishes. You hear these things. We've got to stop being critical and judgmental and rather encourage the people that are there. Because we're all thinking the same things, but also we need that help and encouragement and support. Think about the young people. We think about future priests. Well, there's a crisis of priests and people to serve and all that stuff. Well, we need to encourage our young people to think about being a priest or a religious or something like that, to serve the life of the church in the mission. We need to encourage them. The laborers need their food. And in today's climate in Canada, often it's like, yes, we want priests, but don't take my son or my grandson or my nephew or anything like that. Someone else's. That's even among us who are regular Mass attenders and practicing people. We will say, yes, we want to pray for priests, but no one in my family. You're not taking any of mine, Lord. You've got to look at that. There's a little bit of selfishness there. And we're not being generous. And that is a response that we hear, that I've heard often in speaking to young people who have felt the call, but are shy because family, friends, those closest to them aren't encouraging. So we need that support. Also attendance at Mass. That's one way that the laborer gets their food. Part of, when we serve and whatever it is, whether it be the choir or people that help out around the church, obviously the priest, we pour ourselves out for the mission for everyone. And so if only a few people show up at activities or at Mass, there can be despair that sets in as, why are we doing all this? Are there any fruits that are coming from this? So encouragement comes also by participation. We talked about financial support of a parish, and when we look at closure of churches, I know that this gives great pain in our hearts when we hear, okay, this church is closing, or this community is closing, or we may have to close church X, Y, or Z. That gives all of us great pain that, that's too bad, it's such a beautiful church, or they used to be a vibrant community, or I was married there, I had First Communion there, there's memories associated. That's because the community isn't taking care of the church. The laborers are not receiving their food, so to speak, in that the attendance, the volunteering, the participation, the financial support, all those things are drying up. And so that's on the community of disciples as well. So you see, this element of the laborer deserves their food, everyone in the faith is responsible for it. It's not just one person's decision, like, oh, the bishop's this horrible guy, or something like that. It's everyone's responsibility to encourage, to support, to volunteer, to contribute their time, talent, and treasures and resources to the building up of the kingdom. We are all missionaries in this journey of living and building up the kingdom of God. So those are the 2 points I wanted to focus on, and clearly we need to pray today's Mass, and certainly going forward, for a deeper faith and trust in the Lord that He will provide for all of our needs to live the mission of the Church, and certainly to bring that mission outwards and growing our Church. And we need to be reminded and to believe that the community will care for us, that we are members of a larger community, not just ourselves, but that all of us have a role to play in building up God's kingdom.